This is a Czech Dark Lager. The aroma is strong and dominated with rich malt, chocolate, and dried fruit. And the flavor starts with some banana and raisin bread, then moves into complex chocolatey malt and finishes with some subtle bitterness. But what if I added some smoked malt to it? In this video, we're gonna find out. Now, let's make some beer. For this beer, I'm starting with some reverse osmosis water, and I'm building the water profile to match the dark lager profile in Brewfather. This step is pretty important, but if you can't access RO water, some good quality spring water is far better than using tap water. For the grain bill, I'm using 53% Viking Beechwood Smoked malt that was sent to me by More Beer, 27% Proximity brown malt, 13% Vienna, and 3.5% each of chocolate malt and chocolate wheat malt. After making a beer with 100% smoked malt, I'm pretty stoked to see how this turns out at just 53%. Let's mash in at 149 Fahrenheit or 65 Celsius. Alright, I added all my grain, made sure everything was nice and saturated, and then I let it rest for a couple minutes before turning on the recirculation. I'll let the pump run while I clean up the brewery, and then shut it off and let it rest overnight. It's the next morning and you can see the mash temp dropped considerably overnight. I'll just jump to the mash step of my recipe, allowing the mash to recirculate while we make our way back up to mash temp. And even though it's at about 75 Fahrenheit right now, it spent plenty of time in the proper temperature range last night. The only reason I'm bringing it back up to temp before pulling the basket is to make sure the sugars are flowing well and we extract everything we need to hit our original gravity. Okay, we've been recirculating at 149 Fahrenheit or 65 Celsius for about 5 minutes. Time to yank these grains and get our boil started. With the basket up and out of the wort, I'm continuing to recirculate for a step called the Vorlauf. This will filter the wort and increase efficiency. After 10 minutes, I'll sparge until I've reached my pre-boil volume. We're up to a full boil and it's time for the first hop addition. Here's 28 grams or 24 IBUs of Saaz, and our 60-minute boil timer starts now. With 15 minutes left in the boil, I'm going in with 7 grams or 3 IBUs of Saaz and a Whirlfloc tablet that probably isn't necessary. At the end of the boil, I chilled it down as low as it would go before oxygenating and transferring to the fermenter. I used my Brewbuilt Ice Master 2 glycol chiller to finish chilling the beer down to 68 Fahrenheit or 20 Celsius, then pitched 1 packet of 3470 lager yeast. 6 days later, I reached a stable final gravity of 1013, and then I conditioned the beer for a month before serving. Let's see how it turned out. To recap, this beer started with some reverse osmosis water that I adjusted to match the dark lager water profile in Brewfather. To that, I added some Beechwood Smoked malt, brown malt, Vienna, chocolate, and chocolate wheat. For the hops, I went with 28 grams of Saaz at 60 minutes and another 7 grams at 15 minutes for 27 total IBUs. With an original gravity of 1049 and a final gravity of 1013, this beer clocks in at 4.5% ABV. It's dark brown in color with amber red hues around the edges of the glass with a foamy tan head. It smells like smoky, dark, toasted bread with hints of chocolate and raisin. Going in for a taste, I get dark roasted coffee, toasted bread, apricot, and a crisp bitterness at the end that lingers with some chocolate and raisin flavors. The body isn't quite as robust as my original Czech Dark, and the flavors are much more on the roasted side. For only making minor changes to the recipe, it's pretty wild what this smoked malt did to change this beer. Looking back, the one thing I would change is the mash schedule. The first time around, I used a step mash, which gave the beer a rich body and well-rounded flavor. The single infusion overnight was super convenient, but left the beer tasting a little too thin. I'm also curious to try this again with some marshmallows added at flame out to give it that classic campfire s'mores taste. Overall, I think this is a good beer and I'm stoked to keep tweaking the recipe. Now I'm curious, which of your recipes could you add a little smoked malt to? If this got you thinking down those lines, let me know in the comments. My name's Dan, this is Hops and Gnarly. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you again soon.